The first thing this world ever puts in front of you is built to kill you, not to test you, not to teach you a pattern you will need later, but to end your first life within a few minutes of your first step. And almost everyone who has ever walked into that chapel has died on its floor without landing a meaningful blow. Somewhere very far from there, at the bottom of a ruined city that fell out of time, a dragon with many heads has been lying in the dark for longer than the current religion has existed, waiting for a god who is never coming back, and he will fight you to the death over an empty room. Between those two, you will kill a few hundred things. Nearly every one of them is still guarding something that is already gone. This is a long, slow walk through all of them, and you do not need to hold on to any of it. If you drift off somewhere along the road, that is exactly what this was built for. We are going to walk it in the order the world actually asks you to walk it, from that chapel floor to the last throne, because the order turns out to be an argument. Who you are permitted to kill early, who the world hides behind 3 regions and a frozen mountain. Which of these deaths change something real, and which ones simply end a life the story had already finished with. Before we are done, you will have met kings who were thrown away, saints who rotted from the inside out, guardians with no name and no face, and no one left to answer to, and one warrior who throws down his weapon before he will fight you honestly. You wake on a stone floor in a ruined chapel, in the rain, holding a weapon barely worth the name. There is a doorway ahead of you, with gray light coming through it, and standing in that light, already turning toward you, is something the size of a house that appears to have been assembled rather than born. It has too many arms. Some of them hold weapons, a slender ornamental sword in one, a round golden shield in another, and some of them simply hang there, rooted at the shoulder and the hip and the ribs where no arm belongs. Beneath the green cloak draped across its bulk, there are legs that do not match each other. And somewhere near the top of all that accumulated flesh, there is a face, young, almost delicate, framed by long silver hair, watching you with an expression that could be patience and could be nothing at all. This is the grafted scion, and it kills almost everybody. That is not a failure of design. It is the design. You have been given a fraction of the health you will carry an hour from now, a weapon with no upgrades, and no way to retreat, and the game has placed in front of you a creature that will end the fight in 3 or 4 exchanges. Most players die here. Most players are meant to. The bloodstain you leave on that floor is, for a great many people, the true beginning of the story, the first lesson delivered in the only language this world consistently speaks. What almost nobody realizes on that first attempt is that the fight is winnable. The Scion carries a little under 2,600 health, which is not a trivial number for a character with no upgrades, but it is a real number, and a patient player with a good roll and a great deal of stubbornness can bring it down. And here is the part that stays with me. If you win, nothing changes. The same cutscene plays. You still fall, you still wake in the stranded graveyard beneath the earth, you still begin the game exactly where the player who died begins it. Your victory is acknowledged with 2 items, and no alteration to your circumstances whatsoever. That is the second lesson, arriving on the heels of the first, and it will be repeated to you for the next 100 hours in progressively larger forms. You can win the fight and still not change the outcome. Those 2 items are worth stopping on because they are the first pieces of real evidence this world ever hands you, and both of them are talking about a family you have not met yet. The first is the ornamental straight sword, a thin, decorative blade that superior swordsmen liked to wield in pairs. Its description ends on a line that means nothing at all on a first read and a great deal on a second. After falling from grace, the dregs of the golden lineage sought power and purpose in the past. Read that again in a few hours, once you know what the golden lineage is, and what falling from grace costs a person in this world, and it stops being flavor text and becomes an obituary. The second is the Golden Beast Crest Shield, and this one is a genuine plant, laid down before you can possibly understand it. It is a great shield of dull gold, with a beast engraved on its face, and the description names the beast directly. The beast depicted is Sarosh, aged counselor who guides the golden lineage. You will not meet Sarosh for a very long time. When you finally do, at the top of a flight of stairs in a burning capital, he will be riding on the back of the most important warrior in this world's history, and what he is doing there will reframe an entire life. The first monster you ever fight is carrying his portrait, and the game does not say a word about it. There is one more thing about the Scion, and it is the reason it opens this particular walk rather than any other creature. It is not unique. Grafted Scions appear again and again across the lands between, in a burial ground below Limgrave, where two of them guard a tomb together, in Stormvale Castle, in the lake country of Liurnia, on the volcano in the north. They are not a species, they are a product. Somebody made them deliberately by taking limbs from the dead and joining them to a living body, and the man who did it holds a castle you will reach in about 2 hours, which means the very first creature you fight is a piece of evidence in a case you will not know you are building until much later, and its grotesque, sorrowful, overlimbed body is the opening statement. Grafting comes first. Before the castle, before the family, before a single name is spoken aloud, this world shows you flesh that has been added to, and lets you draw your own conclusion about what kind of place would produce such a thing. Everything that follows, every desperate addition, every fused inheritance, every body in this story that could not simply be allowed to stay one body, is a variation on the shape lying dead on that chapel floor behind you. The road out of the graveyard is quieter. What is waiting on it is not. The first thing you see when you climb out of the ground into open air is a ruined gate, a stretch of grass, and a hill sloping away toward a lake. And on the road, quite far off, sitting perfectly still on an enormous horse, is a knight in gold. He is not hidden. He is not guarding a door. He is on the road, in the open, in the middle of a landscape with nothing in it, worth defending, and he has been there long enough that most players assume at first he is scenery. He is the tree sentinel, and he is the single clearest illustration of tonight's whole argument, delivered within about 90 seconds of your arrival in the world proper. The tree sentinels are an order of knights dedicated to the protection of the Erdtree. That is what they are for. Their armor is described as imposingly sturdy and nigh unbreakable, and the grace of old yet lingers on it, which is a quietly devastating phrase once you understand that grace in this world is a real substance, a favor that can be granted and withdrawn, and that lingering is what a thing does after it has stopped being given. Their halberds are forged of gold and deal holy damage. Their shields dispel sorcery and answer it with a beam of holy light. And one of them is sitting on an empty road in Limgrave alone, miles from the tree he was sworn to. You can ride straight past him. That detail matters more than it first appears. He is entirely optional. He guards no gate, no bridge, no item you need, and if you never engage him, he will simply remain on that road indefinitely in his golden armor, doing the thing he has always done. The road leads to a small church with a merchant outside it and a broken statue. That is all. Whatever the tree sentinel is protecting out there, it is not on the map anymore. There is one piece of their equipment that turns this from atmosphere into something much colder. Some sentinels carry not a shield but a torch, and the torch has a description. It is given to protectors of the Erdtree, and its flames are bestowed with a special incantation which allows the bear to see assassins cloaked in veils. Sit with that for a moment. Somebody, at some point, equipped this order with the specific ability to see invisible killers, which means invisible killers were expected, which means that on some night in this world's history, the people guarding the Golden Tree were issued equipment for a threat they had already learned to fear. The event that Torch was made for has long since happened. It succeeded. The Knight on the Road is still carrying the countermeasure. Not all of them stayed the same. There is a second order, the Draconic Tree Sentinels, and their equipment tells a story the game never spells out. Their weapon is said to have been whittled from the claw of a great ancient dragon. So is their shield. Both are imbued with lightning, and the description of that claw ends on a line worth hearing twice. It tears through the dragon's feeble descendants with ease. Knights sworn to a tree armed themselves with pieces of a dragon, specifically in order to kill dragons, not the great ones. The feeble descendants, the diminished heirs, the ones still flying around the lakes of Limgrave breathing ordinary fire. Somewhere in the history of this order, protecting the Erdtree stopped meaning standing in front of it and started meaning hunting down what was left of an older world. You will hear it said that they did this after a particular dragon attacked the capital, and that they concluded the only way to guard the tree was to become dragons themselves. That is a fan reading, and a good one, but it is not written anywhere in the game. What is written is narrower and colder. They took a dragon apart, and they made tools out of it. You will not meet a Draconic Tree Sentinel for a long while. They stand at the gate of the royal capital, and again far later in a city outside of time, and it is worth being precise about this, because the two orders are easy to confuse, and their locations are not interchangeable. The Golden Rider on the Limgrave Road is the ordinary kind. The lightning-clad kind guards the capital. South of that road, out on the lake, there is a dragon. Flying Dragon Aegil comes down out of the sky onto a stretch of shallow water and burns a crowd of wandering nobles alive as an introduction. He breathes fire, and this is worth naming carefully because it is the point of him. Flying dragons are the weaker descendants of the ancient dragons who once ruled the lands between. They lack the stone scales, and they lack the inherited command of lightning, which is why lightning hurts them. Aegil is what remains of a species that used to hold this world, and what remains cannot do the thing the species was famous for. He is a diminished heir breathing ordinary fire in a lake, and when you kill him, he leaves a heart. That heart is not a trophy. It is a sacrament. Consume a dragon's heart at the altar to make its power yours. The description says, an offering used in the dragon communion. There is a church for this. There are people who eat these hearts on purpose, in a ritual, in order to slowly become the thing they are consuming. You will meet them later, in a cave, and they will not be well. North of the lake, the ground rises toward a cliff, and on that cliff is a castle, and in front of the castle, on a bridge in the fog, is the first person in this story who speaks to you like you matter. Foul tarnished, in search of the Elden Ring. Emboldened by the flame of ambition, someone must extinguish thy flame. Let it be Margit the Fell. Margit is the first fight in this game that is genuinely about skill rather than survival, and he is built to punish everything the previous 2 hours taught you. He fights with a staff, and out of the empty air he conjures weapons, thrown daggers of Erdsteel, a Carian knight's sword held in a hand that was not there a moment ago, and past a certain point in the fight, a colossal hammer of light. Every single one of those conjured weapons deals holy damage. This is important, and the point at which many retellings of him go wrong. There is no rot in Margit, and no blood. He is a creature of golden light, throwing golden weapons, and he is doing it to keep you away from a castle. He also gives you the clue to his own identity, and trusts you not to notice. There is an item you can buy from a man in a cave who is not to be trusted, called Margit's Shackle. Its description explains that shackles were used to bind the accursed people called the Omen, and that these ones were made to keep a particular omen under strictest confinement. A particular omen, not this one. A specific individual, important enough that somebody commissioned custom restraints, and the shackle works on the thing standing in front of you. You are not fighting a gatekeeper. You are fighting a king in disguise, wearing a false name, guarding the road to a castle that is not his, and you will not learn who he actually is until you have crossed most of the world. When you do finally beat him here, he leaves you a small hand-knitted bag and tells you, without much heat, that he will remember you. The gate opens onto a castle full of soldiers who have nothing left to defend either, and at the top of it, a man who has spent his entire life trying to prove he belongs to a family that barely acknowledges him. Stormvale Castle was not built for the man currently sitting in it. It belonged to an old king back when the true storm raged, and you can feel that in the architecture, in the scale of the halls, in the fact that everything about the place is slightly too grand for the person who now rules it. Godrick the Grafted holds this castle, and Godrick the Grafted is, by the game's own accounting, barely entitled to hold anything at all. There is a woman in the Round Table hold, a finger reader named Ania, who will tell you exactly where he sits in the family. The demigods are each and all the direct offspring of Queen Marika, she says. Godrick the Grafted was but a distant relation, the runt of the litter, his divine blood sorely diluted. That is the whole man in 3 sentences, and everything he does follows from it. He grafts wolf legs, extra arms, the limbs of his own soldiers and his own servants, sewn onto a body that was born insufficient and has been trying to correct the error ever since. The grafted scions you met in the chapel are his work. So is his kinsman Godfroy, sealed in a stone arena out on the Altus Plateau, who practices the same grotesque act and who has fought as a near copy of Godrick himself, the same moveset in a different body, a family resemblance expressed through violence. When you reach him, he is standing in a narrow paved graveyard, with graves crowding both sides, talking to a dragon. The dragon is dead, impaled on a statue in the arena behind him. Godrick addresses it as Mighty Dragon, third a true-born heir, and asks it to lend him its strength. He calls it kindred. It does not answer because it cannot, and the fight begins. The first half of it is a man with 2 axes and a great deal of wind. He summons cyclones. He brings the ground up. He rolls and lunges and covers distance with a speed that his size does not suggest. It is a competent, aggressive, entirely conventional fight against a large armored man, and if it ended there, he would be a forgettable First Lord. Then his health drops past the point where he can still believe he is winning, and he stops attacking altogether. What follows is one of the most upsetting things a boss does in this game, and it is over in about 6 seconds. Godrick raises his own arm and cuts it off. Then he takes the head of that dead dragon and grafts it onto the stump, and the head is live, and it breathes fire, and the second half of the fight is a man swinging a screaming dragon at you on the end of his own severed limb. I want to be careful here because this is a place where retellings tend to invent. The dragon has no name. Godrick calls it Mighty Dragon and truest of dragons and kindred, and the game never once tells you which dragon it was, where it came from, or how a man of his diminished standing came to have one. The item you can make from it, the grafted dragon, says only that it embodies the power that still remained in the dragon's head that was grafted to Godrick's left arm. That is the extent of what is actually known. Anyone who names that dragon for you is filling a gap the game left open on purpose. His other weapon is the more revealing of the two. The axe of Godrick is a golden battle axe emblazoned with the figure of a beast, and the description explains that the beast represents some of the strength of Godfrey, first Elden Lord, and patriarch of the Golden lineage. There is that beast again. The shield in the chapel carried Sarosh, counselor to the Golden lineage. The axe in the castle carries the beast that stands for the founder's strength. Godrick is not simply collecting body parts, he is collecting a bloodline in relics and in flesh from a family that produced him at such a distance that a finger reader can dismiss him in a single sentence. He fights with an axe that advertises somebody else's power in a castle built by somebody else's king, wearing arms taken from his own dead. And in his last moments, run through and finished, he does not beg. He says that he is the Lord of all that is golden, and that one day they will return together to their home, bathed in rays of gold. He is talking to the dragon, or to the family. The line does not specify, and it is more affecting for that. Nothing changes when he dies. Stormvale stays standing. The soldiers stay dead. The war outside the castle continues exactly as it was. He was never load-bearing for anything larger than his own walls. What his death does give you is the first great rune in the game and the first real understanding of what these demigods actually are, which is not a pantheon of equals, but a scattered, damaged family, each holding a fragment of something that broke, each convinced their fragment is the important one. One further note, because it gets repeated as fact, and it is not. Nephele, the warrior who fights beside you in this castle, and who eventually rules Limgrave in Godrick's place, is very often described as his daughter. The game never says so. What it says is that Gideon Ofnir took her in when she lost the guidance of grace, and that she comes from the Badlands far away. Her surname points somewhere else entirely, toward a warrior we will not reach for many hours yet. The connection may be real. It is not stated, and it should not be told to you as though it were. Below the castle, and below almost everywhere else, the ground is full of doors. Behind those doors are the guardians nobody wrote a story for. The lands between is hollow underneath. Every region you cross has doors in it, set into hillsides, and behind waterfalls and at the back of ruins, and behind those doors are narrow stone corridors that go down. These are the catacombs, and each one holds a guardian, and almost none of those guardians has a name, a line of dialogue, or a story anyone bothered to write down. They are the largest population in tonight's walk. They are also, taken together, the clearest evidence for what this world actually does to the people who serve it. Start with the Erdtree burial watchdogs, because they are the first ones most travelers meet. They are stone, not flesh. They lie flat and still in the dark until you step into the room, and then they rise on four legs with a long tail sweeping behind them, and the tail is where the variation lives. Some of them burn, some of them carry frost. One, buried under the Altus Plateau, cracks with lightning. They protect the catacombs where Erdtree burial took place, and the greatsword some of them carry is decorated with a watchman's eye. That sword has one of the quietest and most brutal descriptions in the game. Though decorated with the watchman's eye, the pupil was taken by grave robbers and is now hollow, leaving this sword a mere lump of stone. The watchman's eye has no pupil. Someone came down here at some point and prized it out to sell. The guardian is still standing over the tomb with a blind sword, doing the job, and the theft it was built to prevent has already happened to its own weapon. Deeper in three separate catacombs, there is something thinner. The cemetery shades are lanky, hollow-chested figures with paired curved blades and a small crustacean creature riding on top of their heads, and the wiki text calls them insect-ridden gravekeepers, which is the whole of what is known about them. There is no remembrance, no weapon description explaining what they were, no dialogue. The creature on the head is never accounted for. What they do have is a number worth pausing on. The cemetery shade in the Black Knife catacombs has 691 health, which is the lowest of any boss in the game, lower than the tutorial monster, lower than every roadside beast you have already ridden past. It is the single most fragile thing in this world that the game still frames with a name and a health bar and a fog wall, and it is standing in the catacombs beneath Liurnia guarding a tomb, and it will still try. Then there are the duelists, and with them the writing gets specific again in a way that changes how the whole underground reads. Grave Warden duelists fight with colossal axes trailing iron ball chains, or with two heavy hammers, and they wear bronze armor worked all over with snakes. That detail is not decorative. In this world, the serpent is the symbol of treachery to the Erdtree, and these men are wearing it as a uniform. They were gladiators. They fought in the Colosseums for a living, and they were exiled from them, and after banishment they came down here to become guardians of Erdtree burial. Read the cloak description, and the arrangement becomes clear. Those who once fought for a living were driven from the Colosseum and becoming guardians of Erdtree burial. That is a sentence about a sentence. The order that cast them out gave them a second job, underground in the dark, watching over the graves of the faith that exiled them, wearing the mark of treachery on their chests while they do it. Some of them, in the far north and in Caelid, have rotted through in the meantime, and now carry a bronze snake that inflicts the rot when it takes hold of you. Above ground, the same logic is running in daylight. Scattered across the world are the minor Erdtrees, smaller golden trees standing alone in the middle of regions that have mostly stopped caring about them. Besides several of them is an Erdtree avatar, an enormous bark-skinned figure with a staff carved in the shape of the tree it serves. And the description of that staff carries the single most useful line in this entire chapter. The avatars, emerging in the wake of the Elden Ring's shattering, were determined to protect the withering Erdtree's offspring. They are not ancient. That is the thing. These are not old guardians, left over from a golden age. They came into being after the catastrophe, specifically because the tree was dying, and they arranged themselves around its children to keep them safe. The avatars are a defensive response to a wound that had already been inflicted, standing watch over saplings of a tree that will be burned down before the story is finished, most likely by you. And just not every minor Erdtree has one. Several stand entirely unguarded, and 3 avatars are not at minor Erdtrees at all. One in the royal capital, one down in the root system beneath the world, one inside the Halig tree far to the north. Whatever assignment they gave themselves, they did not manage to cover the whole map. Near the roots, there is something worse off than any of them. The ulcerated tree spirits are vast serpentine things, with bark for skin and swollen red welts along their bodies, and they thrash and coil and spit golden fire, and they are found where the Erdtree's roots come closest to the surface. They are also, and this is worth being honest about, completely unexplained. No remembrance, no weapon, no item description anywhere in the game says what an ulcerated tree spirit is or was. Every account you will hear about them, that they are the tree's diseased roots, that they are the dead the tree swallowed, that they are an immune response, is somebody's reading. The game shows you a screaming wounded thing curled around the roots of a god and declines to tell you what it is. What it does give you in the same rooms is the golden seed. And the golden seed says this: when the Elden Ring was shattered, these seeds flew from the Erdtree, scattering across the various lands, as if life itself knew that its end has come. One more, out on the southern peninsula, because it is the only guardian in this chapter that chose the job. Castle Morn kept misbegotten as slaves. The misbegotten are malformed beings, with the tails and horns and scales of animals, held to be a punishment for contact with the crucible, and they were worked at that castle until they rose, killed the garrison, and took the place for themselves. The leonine misbegotten led that rising. It is red-maned and enormous. It fights on a windswept ledge over the sea called Moongrave, and it fights without pause, and in its hands is the castle's legendary sword. The grafted blade greatsword has nothing to do with the grafting in the castle to the north. This is a different sense of the word entirely. A lone surviving champion from a country now vanished was so determined to continue fighting that he claimed the swords of an entire clan of warriors, and they were fused into one blade. A revenger's weapon, the description says, burdened with oceans of anger and regret. A slave rebellion won a castle and ended up holding a revenge weapon on a cliff edge, waiting for the next armed stranger to arrive, which is what you are. North of all of this, the land drops away into water, and the water has an academy standing in it. The Academy of Raya Lucaria sits on an island in a drowned country, ringed by a barrier that will kill you if you touch it, and to get inside, you need a key that a dragon is sleeping on. The dragon is Smarag, and Smarag breathes magic rather than fire, because Smarag was a devourer of sorcerers, and over time his body became corrupted by their glintstones. Dragons in this world become what they eat. You can kill him for it, or you can creep around behind him and take the key while he sleeps, and the game is entirely relaxed about which you choose. Inside, past the lecture halls and the crystal-grown corpses of students, there is a wolf. The Red Wolf of Radigan guards the debate parlor, which is a room where scholars once argued. It is a great red animal wearing jewelry. It casts blade sorceries, and it fights with a sword of light held in its jaws. And I want to be careful here, because this is a place where a story has grown over the evidence. You will hear in a great many retellings that this wolf was Radigan's companion, kept while he was married to Renala, and abandoned when he left her for the capital. It is a lovely, sad idea. It is also not in the game. No item description says it. The boss drops a memory stone and nothing else, and the memory stone talks about the moon, not about Radigan. What is actually confirmed is the name on the health bar and nothing beyond it. A red wolf carrying a man's name in a building he left, and the game declines to explain the connection. That memory stone is worth quoting anyway, because it is the first mention of something that will matter enormously later, said to be a fragment of the black moon that once hung above the eternal city. There is a city under this world with a false sky, and something took its moon. Up the stairs, in the Grand Library, is one of the strangest boss encounters ever built, and almost every account of it gets the first half wrong. Renala, Queen of the Full Moon, does not fight you in her first phase. She cannot. She is sealed inside a golden sphere that makes her invulnerable, floating slowly around the room, singing, cradling a large amber egg against her chest. She does not attack. She never attacks. What attacks you are her students, the juvenile scholars, small pale figures that lunge and spit fire and lift you off the ground, and at any moment one of them is singing along with her, marked by a golden glow. You break the singer. Not kill it, break it, and another takes up the song immediately, and you break that one, and then the third, and on the third the sphere fails, and Renala falls out of the air onto the floor. Every scholar in the room stops fighting at once. She lies there, helpless, and you hit her. That is the first half of the fight. A woman who cannot defend herself, surrounded by children who defend her instead, singing to an egg. She is looking for her family while she does it. "Where did you flee, my sweetings?" she asks the empty library. "Come out from whence ye hide." And later, to nobody, "Ah, my beloved, have no fear, I will hold thee. Patience, ye will be countless born, for ever and ever." And at one point, quietly, "O little Ranni, my dear daughter, weave thy night into being. Ranni left a very long time ago. So did the other two." The second phase is a real fight, and it shows you what she used to be. She stands, She takes up the Carian regal scepter, and she throws the full weight of the Academy at you. Comets, meteor showers, the full moon itself conjured overhead and sent drifting toward you to strip the magic out of the air. She summons spirits to fight beside her, a knight, a pack of wolves, a small dragon. She is genuinely dangerous, and she is doing all of it standing over the egg. What happened to her is written on her crown, and it is one of the cruelest item descriptions in the game. When Renala, head of both the Academy of Raya Lucaria and the Carian royal family, lost her husband Radagon, her heart went along with him. And then those at the Academy realized that Renala was no champion after all. Read the order of those sentences. Her husband left. Her heart went with him, and then the people she had led for years looked at her and revised their opinion of who she had always been. The Academy did not turn on her because she failed. It turned on her because she grieved, and grief revealed her to be a person rather than a legend, and they could not forgive her for it. They rebelled, and they locked her in the library, and she has been in here ever since with the egg. The egg is the other half of it. Radagon left it with her, and she has devoted herself to it through what the game calls the grim art of reincarnation. This is the mechanic that lets you rebuild your character, and it is described in-world with no warmth at all. Children born anew by Renala are all frail and short-lived, imperfect beings, each and all. She is making children who do not survive, over and over, in the dark, because the man who left her gave her an egg and she has nothing else of his. And here is the detail that separates her from everyone else tonight. When you win, she does not die. Renala is the only remembrance boss in this game who survives her own defeat. Go back into the library afterwards, and she is sitting there, holding the egg, and she will rebirth you as many times as you ask. She was not guarding a treasure, or a road, or a rune. She was guarding a room she was imprisoned in with an object she was left, and beating her changes nothing about her situation whatsoever. She simply continues. Why Radagon left her is not a mystery. There is a pastor at a small church in the same region who will tell you the whole thing plainly, and the sequence matters. Radagon came to Liurnia at the head of a golden host and met Renala in battle. 2 wars were fought. Then, when Godfrey, first Elden Lord, was hounded from the lands between, Radagon left Renala to return to the Erdtree capital, becoming Queen Marika's second husband and king consort. A position opened up in the capital. He took it. There is a stone monument standing out in the lake that records how the fighting ended, and it is the single most useful sentence in this region. No victory for the golden, nor for the moon. No prize but atonement, the birth of a vow. Nobody won the war. The war ended in a wedding, and when the wedding was no longer useful, it ended too. Liurnia is a country that drowned, not all at once, and not in living memory, but thoroughly, and what is left is a shallow silver lake standing over rooftops, with towers and ruins and half-submerged villages pushing up through the water in every direction. Most of what guards it now is guarding something already underwater. In a hidden cellar in the King's Realm ruins, behind a wall that is not really a wall, there is a royal revenant. It is a pale, gaunt thing with too many limbs that hauls itself up out of shallow water, moves faster than anything that shape should move, spits poison, and vanishes into the ground to reappear behind you. It is genuinely upsetting to fight, and it has one property that makes it unlike anything else in the game. Healing hurts it. Cast a healing incantation near a royal revenant, the ordinary prayer any pilgrim of the Erdtree might use to close a wound, and it will strip roughly half the creature's health away in a single word. A slow blessing will drain almost all of it over half a minute. prayer applied to this thing functions as a weapon. The game never explains what a royal revenant is. There is no remembrance, no weapon description, no dialogue, nothing. Every account of them you will find that they are carrion experiments, that they are stitched from corpses, is somebody's guess. All the game gives you is the mechanic, and the mechanic is a complete sentence on its own. Something was done to this creature so far outside the natural order that the language of healing reads to its body as an attack. North of the lake, past a forest full of grasping hands, is Caria Manor, and in the moonlit garden at the top of it is a mounted knight who will become the saddest small story of the night. Royal Knight Loretta fights on horseback with a glintstone halberd and conjures a great bow out of the air to fire arrows of light down at you from across the garden. She is elegant, difficult, and completely silent, and she is standing in the wrong place because Loretta is not dead here. You will meet her again hundreds of miles north, inside a golden tree that a boy grew as a sanctuary, defending its outermost gate. Same knight, same bow, developed further, 4 arrows now instead of 1, and the object that proves they are the same person is her weapon. Her war sickle was originally given for service as a personal guard to Carian royalty, and the description notes one alteration. The weapon's blue glintstone has been replaced with unalloyed gold. She changed sides, and she had her sword regilded to say so. Carian blue prized out, unalloyed gold set in, which is the specific material of the boy in the north, the one who wards off outer gods and rot. Her helm explains why. Loretta, once a royal Carian knight, went on a journey in search of a haven for Albinorics, and determined that the Erdtree was their best chance for eventual salvation. She left a royal house because she found a people nobody else would protect, and she went looking for somewhere they could live. What is standing in the moonlit garden of the house she left is widely read as a ghost, a memory the Carians conjured to keep the grounds, and there is a reason that reading exists. The manor repelled an invasion once by conjuring an enchanted snare that remains potent to this day, and the souls of the attackers are still caught in it. But no item in the game says the Loretta in the garden is an apparition. It is the leading interpretation, and it is not confirmed. And the honest version of this story is that a knight who left is somehow still on duty at the door she walked out of. Further out in the lake, there's a dragon guarding a tower, and its situation is the neatest in the region because for once, the game states the arrangement outright. Glintstone Dragon. Adula lands outside Rani's Rise and attacks anyone who approaches. Fight it there, and it will not die. After a while, it simply leaves, and you will not see it again until much later, at a cathedral on a high plateau in the southwest that you can only reach after killing something under the earth. That is where it can actually be killed, and its sorcery explains what it was doing at the tower. Adula, a devourer of sorcerers, was bested by Rani the Witch, and subsequently swore a knightly oath to her dark moon. A dragon lost a fight and became a knight. Not a slave, not a summon, a knight, sworn by oath, standing outside the tower of a witch who is not inside it because Rani has not been in that tower for a very long time. Adela is guarding a doorway its lady abandoned, and when you finally corner it at the cathedral, it is still guarding, hundreds of miles away, out of habit or loyalty or whatever a dragon has instead. There are 2 more things in Liurnia worth naming, and they are the same thing wearing different colors. In a sealed arena east of the manor, there is an Onyx Lord, a tall figure of stone with a golden-hued greatsword that pushes everything away from it. Elsewhere, in graveyards and tunnels, and out at the edge of a rotted lake, there are Alabaster Lords, the same kind of creature in blue-white stone, whose swords pull everything in instead. Both are described identically. A race of ancients with skin of stone who were said to have risen to life when a meteor struck long ago. They did not come from here. Something fell out of the sky, and they stood up, and the people who found them called them lords, in reverential fear of their destructive power, which is the game telling you plainly that the title was not an office. It was what frightened people called them. One of them taught the most famous warrior in this world how to fight. The sorcery called Gravity Well, taken from an alabaster lord in the graveyard behind the academy, ends with a sentence that reframes an entire life. A gravitational technique studied by the young Radon. His master was an alabaster lord with skin of stone, which means that before he was a general, before the red sky and the rot and the festival held over his corpse, there was a boy who went and found one of these things and asked it to teach him. The road east goes red. Caelid is the color of a wound. You cross a broken bridge out of Limgrave, and the grass stops, and the sky turns the shade of an old bruise, and everything that lives here is dying slowly and has been for a long time. This is what a single afternoon did to a region. At the far eastern edge, past a castle held by soldiers who have kept their discipline in a land that has lost everything else, there is a festival being held, a war festival honoring the last battle and death of the mightiest demigod of the Shattering. The man being honored is not dead. He is out on the dunes below, and the festival exists so that somebody will come and finish him. Be precise about where this happens, because it matters. You do not fight Radon in Redmane Castle. You take the lift behind the castle's church down, step through a sending gate at the bottom, and arrive on a beach called the Wailing Dunes, and the fight happens there, on open sand, under a red sky, with the sea behind you. The first thing that happens is that the sky fills with arrows. Radon opens at a distance no boss in this game has any right to open at, firing volleys of great arrows from a black iron bow across the entire length of the arena, and you ride toward him through them with the summon signs of 8 other people scattered in the sand around you. Up to 6 of them can come at once. Blade, Alexander, Lionel, Okina, Patches, a Finger Maiden, and eventually the Castellan who organized the whole thing. It is the only fight in the game, built like a battle, and every one of those summons dies about as fast as you would expect. When you finally reach him, you find that he is enormous, that he fights with 2 curved greatswords of black steel, and that he is riding a horse far too small for him. The horse is called Leonard, and Leonard is the reason for everything. Here's the line from the remembrance the Erdtree keeps of him. The Red Lion General wielded gravitational powers, which he learned in Celia during his younger days, all so he would never have to abandon his beloved but scrawny steed. He did not learn to bend gravity, to hold back the stars. He learned it because his horse was too small to carry him, and he refused to get a different horse. Every gravity technique in his arsenal, the stomps that crack the ground, the pull that drags you across the sand, the meteor he becomes in the second half of the fight, all of it began as a boy's workaround for a problem he could have solved by walking into a stable and choosing a bigger animal. He went and found a creature of stone that had fallen out of the sky instead. The sorcery called Gravity Well says it outright. A gravitational technique studied by the young Radon. His master was an alabaster lord with skin of stone. And there is one more thing he chose, which closes a circle opened in a chapel a very long time ago. His armor is described as depicting the golden lion, and the description explains the symbol. The golden lion is said to symbolize Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, and his beast regent, Sarosh. From his youngest years, Radon was naturally captivated by the Lord of the battlefield, the beast on the tutorial shield, the beast on Godrick's stolen axe, and now a boy in Caelid choosing his heraldry, reaching for the same figure, because the greatest warrior who ever lived had a lion on his back, and that seemed like the thing to be. What happened to him is written on a stone in the swamp. Radon and Malenia locked in stalemate. Then the scarlet rot blooms. Neither of them won, and neither of them died. That is the fact most retellings get wrong in both directions. Malenia did not kill him, and he did not kill her. She released the rot, which is the single most destructive act any character performs in this story, and it ruined the region permanently, and it put her into a coma her knights carried her home from, and it got into him. The Castellan running the festival will tell you what it left behind. General Radon is cursed ever to wander. Eaten from the inside by Malenia's scarlet rot, his wits are long gone. Now he gathers the corpses of former friends and foes alike, gorging on them like a dog. The strongest man in the world, reduced to eating the people he used to command, on a beach, holding the stars still out of muscle memory. That last part is not decoration. Radon's whole purpose, the thing he was famous for, was that his gravity held the stars in place, and the moment he dies, a star falls out of the sky and cracks open the ground in Limgrave and reveals a buried city underneath. Somebody wanted that. Ronnie needed him dead so the star could fall, and the festival was the mechanism, and every hero who came to the dunes for glory was doing her errand. His weapon set contains the cruelest object in the region, and it is easy to walk past. Among his gear is a set of great arrows, and the description is 4 short sentences. These are great arrows used by General Radon during the Festival of Combat. These are, in fact, the many spears with which he was stabbed by the Cleanrot Knights. He is shooting you with the spears they left in him. He pulled them out of his own body and put them in his bow, because a rotted mind does not distinguish between a weapon and a wound, and because in some sense he has been fighting that battle continuously ever since it ended. The rest of Caelid is populated by people still doing their jobs in the aftermath. Out in the middle of the swamp, at its rotted heart, stands Commander O'Neill, who is not to be confused with a similarly titled man freezing on a mountain far to the north. O'Neill summons soldiers out of the ground, 5 at first, and 3 larger ones when he weakens, and his halberd carries a beaten red battle standard, and the standard's description is the thesis of this entire video compressed into 1 sentence. Even after his lord was fled, Commander O'Neill continued to brandish this flag in the devastation of the rot-eaten field of battle, the sole veteran who remembers this battle with pride. His lord ran. The battle is decades over. The ground is poison, and the army is dead, and he is still out there raising the banner and calling for a formation, and the skill on his weapon buffs the attack power of nearby allies, and there are no nearby allies, and he uses it anyway. Northwest of him, a dragon lies in the rot. Decaying X6 breathes scarlet rot instead of fire, and the clouds hang in the air for a long time after, so that the arena poisons itself as the fight continues. Its incantation carries a phrase that fits the whole region. X6, Dragon Communion Revenger, did not forget his hatred even as he succumbed to the scarlet rot. A dragon that hunted the people who eat dragons, dissolving, and holding on to the grudge as the last intact thing about him. And on the eastern bank of the swamp, there is a town of sorcerers called Celia, sealed behind magic, which opens only when you climb its 3 towers and light the braziers on top of them. Inside the crypt is a pair of pale swordsmen with silk veils over their eyes, and they do not belong up here at all. They are Nox, and the Nox live underground, and the reason they have a town on the surface in Caelid is that directly beneath Celia is a buried city, and Celia's sorcerers are its descendants, and they have spent their entire history producing assassins who hunt other sorcerers using magic that turns a body invisible. A town of night killers, sitting on the roof of a city that is waiting for the stars to come, in the one region where a man was holding the stars still. He is not holding them anymore. The ground is open. There is a hole in Limgrave now, where the star came down, and if you climb into it, you fall a very long way into a place with a sky. The sky is fake. That is the first thing to understand about Nokron. There are stars up there, and a moon, and a horizon, and all of it is a very long way underground, with several hundred meters of rock between it and any real weather. The Nox built it. They are a gray-skinned people who committed treason against the greater will, and they were banished for it, sentenced to live beneath the earth under a false night sky, in eternal anticipation of the coming age of stars. That is the sentence. Not death, not erasure. Wait underground for a future that has been promised to you, and build yourself a sky to wait under. They did two things while they waited, and you fight both of them. The first is standing in a courtyard not far from the entrance, and when you walk in, it turns around, and it is you. The mimic tear copies everything: your armor, your weapons, your spells, your health, the flask on your belt, all of it, instantly, and then it fights you with your own build while you try to remember what your build is actually weak to. It is made of liquid silver, and it is one of a family of creatures in this world made from the same material, and the item taken from its family explains what the whole project was for. Mimic tears are the result of an attempt by the Eternal City to forge a lord. They were trying to make a lord, banished, underground, cut off from the Golden Order and its grace and its permission. They attempted to manufacture their own ruler out of silver, and what they produced was a thing that can take the shape of anybody who walks past it and has no will of its own whatsoever. The description of the mask made from one of these creatures notes, dryly, that its mimicry does not extend to imitating the summoner's will. They built a perfect vessel and could not put anything inside it. Deeper in, past the aqueducts, there are two bronze gargoyles guarding the coffin that carries you further down, and their weapons record something that fits the same pattern. Both blades are described as bronze, wielded by valiant gargoyles, and mended, and the material of the mending is what lands. Just like the wielder, the missing parts have been mended with corpse wax, a patchwork of champions. The guardians of the aqueduct are repairs. Whatever they were originally, they have been broken and filled in with wax and put back on duty more than once by somebody, and the phrase the game chooses for them is a patchwork of champions. Instead of a roar, they cough, and what comes out is poison. Elsewhere in the same underground, in a forest of gray trees, at a place called the Hallowhorn Grounds, there is something that does not fight you until you ask it to. You have to light 6 flames scattered around the woods, and then walk to a set of enormous horned remains in the center and touch them, and only then does the regal ancestor spirit come. It is a stag made of light, wearing an antler crown so large it reads as architecture, and it is the single most beautiful thing in this world's underground. Halfway through the fight, it stops being a single animal. It sinks into the ground and reemerges out of one of the smaller spirit creatures wandering the arena, borrowing their movements, hopping like a hare, charging like a boar, and it takes health out of them and out of you to keep itself standing. The faith that produced it is described in one line that quietly refuses the entire religion happening on the surface. Ancestral spirits exist as a phenomenon beyond the purview of the Erdtree. Life sprouts from death, as it does from birth, not resurrection, not preservation, not the golden promise that nothing beloved ever has to end, just the older, plainer arrangement in which things die and other things grow out of them, held by people who were driven underground for believing it. And at the bottom of everything, past a lake of rot that dissolves you as you cross it, in a cavern with no floor to speak of, there is the thing that did this. Astal is not an animal or a person. It is a pale, insectile, many-limbed shape with a cracked skull and an eye visible inside the crack, and it moves by tearing holes in the air and stepping through them, and its attacks are gravity and starlight. It is called the natural born of the void, and it came from somewhere very far away. What it did is the reason the Nox have a false sky. The widely accepted reading, and I want to flag that it is a reading rather than a quoted line, is that Astal assailed an eternal city, destroyed it, and took away its sky. The game supports this indirectly and never states it in a single sentence, so treat it as the leading explanation rather than a fact. What is certain is that there are two buried cities down here, that one of them is a ruin, that the survivors built a replacement sky out of nothing, and that the thing sitting at the bottom of the world is made of the same star debris as the object that fell on Limgrave when Radon died. The people who were promised an age of stars had their sky taken by one. There is a volcano in the northwest of this world with a manor built into its side, and the manor is a recruitment office. People are invited here. They are given rooms and letters and assignments, and the assignments are murders, and the woman who hands them out is warm and gracious and entirely sincere about the cause. Rise with us against the Erdtree, she says, and she means it. Her name is Tanith, and the man she serves is at the bottom of the manor in a pool of magma inside a snake. Rykard is the second son of Radigan and Renala, brother to the general dying in Caelid and to the witch who arranged his deaths. He is a demigod by that marriage, a shard-bearer, and he holds the volcano. And the single most important thing about him, the thing that makes his story worth the time, is what he used to be. Before the blasphemy, Rykard served the Golden Order as a justiciar. He commanded a company of inquisitors. His job was finding heretics and destroying them, and by every account he was extremely good at it, and the machinery he used is still in the building. Go down into the manor's lower levels, and you find the prison town, and the torture equipment, and a pair of enormous clockwork automatons called abductor virgins. They are iron women on wheels, with arms ending in great spinning blades or scythes on chains, and their signature move is to open their own chest cavity and pull you inside it and close. They were built for capturing and transposing victims for interrogation, and one of them, down in the depths of the Sorcerer's Academy far away in Liurnia, still works. Let it take you there and you wake up here in the manor, which is precisely what they were made to do to people. The weapon the pair of them leave behind is the clearest statement of what this place was. Instrument of torture used on nobles behind the curtain at the volcano manor of Mutgelmir. Its numerous spikes pierce the flesh, then singe the wounds with flame behind the curtain. Not in a dungeon, somewhere out of sight, behind the curtain of a manor house where guests are received. Somewhere between running that operation and now, Ricard changed his mind about everything, and the form his change of mind took is one of the strangest decisions any character makes in this story. He did not renounce the order and go into exile. He did not raise an army exactly. He found a great serpent, an immortal one, and he fed himself to it, willingly, whole, great rune and all. The remembrance the tree keeps of him puts it plainly. Rykard took the form of a giant serpent that he might devour, grow, and live eternally. What you fight, therefore, is a two-part thing. First the serpent, an enormous magma-slick snake with a head the size of a house, spitting poison and slamming its chin into the lava. And when it has taken enough, the serpent's mouth opens, and Rykard leans out of it from the waist up, holding a sword, still recognizably a man, fused into the creature's throat. He is delighted to see you. Join the Serpent King as family, he says. Together, we will devour the very gods. That word, family, is the load-bearing one, and his sword explains it. The blasphemous blade restores health when you kill things with it, and the description tells you why. Remains of the countless heroes he has devoured writhe upon the surface of this blade. Now they share the same blood, bound together as family. Everyone he has eaten is family. That is not a metaphor he is using loosely. It is the actual doctrine. The Golden Order offered a version of eternal life in which the divine could not truly die, and everyone else simply had to accept their place in the arrangement. And Rykard's counterproposal is that everybody gets to live forever inside him, together, as kin, and that the way in is to be consumed. Tanith wants this. She asks him in as many words to let her be his serpent, to find purchase within her. When you kill him, she goes to his chamber and eats his remains, because she believes that is how she joins him, and that he will come back stronger. There is a spear lying on the ground just outside his arena, and it is worth naming because it is the only weapon in the game designed for exactly one purpose. The Serpent Hunter manifests a long blade of light when facing such a creature, and it was thought to have been used to hunt an immortal great serpent in the distant past. In the distant past, somebody has done this before. Somebody hunted an immortal serpent long enough ago that the weapon is an antique, and the weapon still works, and it is lying on the floor where anybody can pick it up. One correction worth making, because it is repeated everywhere. The serpent is not named Aglay. There is a chamber in this manor called the Temple of Aglay, sacred to the man-serpents who live here, with a great serpent's shed skin hung above the altar, and the name has migrated from the room onto the boss over years of retelling. The creature you fight is called the God-devouring serpent, and nothing else. The distinction matters because the shed skin in that temple implies there was a serpent here before Rykard climbed into this one. His last words are the most in-character thing he could possibly say. No one will hold me captive. A serpent never dies. He is wrong about the second part. He may be right about the first. The Altus Plateau is the Golden Country, the one the promotional images were made of. Wheat and gilded light and enormous trees, and it is the last stretch of ordinary world before the capital. It is also, boss for boss, the loneliest region in the game. At the top of a poisoned castle in the middle of it, there is a man in iron thorns. Elimer of the Briar holds the shaded castle, which belonged to House Maris, a family of executioners. His armor is wound with iron briars, which the game describes as a mark of the guilty and of those sentenced to death, and he carries an enormous sword that flies out of his hands and moves on its own. The sword's description contains his entire biography in one sentence. Elimer of the Briar, the bell-bearing hunter, snatched the sword from the site of his looming execution and furnished it with battle skills from his home of Eocade. He was about to be executed. He took the executioner's own legendary sword off the block, and he kept it, and he learned to use it properly, and then he stayed. He is standing at the top of the castle where they were going to kill him, wearing the thorns that marked him as condemned, holding their heirloom. His other name is earned in a way that is genuinely unpleasant. At night, at merchants' shacks across the world, a hunter appears and kills the traitor, and takes the bell-bearing that lets somebody else sell their goods. He has been going around murdering the people who sit alone at crossroads selling arrows to travelers. Not far away, there is a stone arena in a valley with a man sealed inside it, and he is the emptiest figure tonight. Godfroy the Grafted has almost twice the health of the Lord of Stormvale, and hits considerably harder, and he fights with exactly the same moves, and he grafts limbs onto himself the same way, and he is described as Godrick's kinsman. And there is nothing else. No remembrance, no weapon of his own, no dialogue. The only things the game gives you are his name, which is a variation on Godfrey's, the name of his prison, which is the Golden Lineage Evergale, and what he drops, which is a talisman depicting the Elden Lord Godfrey. You will read confident accounts of who captured him and which siege he fought in. None of that is in the game. What is in the game is a man of the Golden Line, sealed in a stone circle in a field, performing the same self mutilation as his relative, carrying a picture of his ancestor, with no story attached. The gate of the capital is guarded by the Second Order of Knights, and this is the one place they actually stand where you would expect them to, a draconic tree. Sentinel waits on the avenue outside Landel, enormous, mounted, armored in dragon claw, and its shield calls down red lightning in 3 descending strikes that punish you harder if you block them. It is doing the job. It is at the door of the city, in front of the tree, and there is a genuine capital behind it, worth defending, and after everything we have walked past to get here, that is almost startling. Inside the walls, past the gargoyles and the soldiers, and an enormous bark-skinned avatar that drops out of the sky onto the main avenue and can simply be run around, the path climbs, and on a branch high above the city, there is a fog gate you cannot skip. Behind it is a golden man with an axe and a lion on his back. This is Godfrey, first Elden Lord, and he is not really here. What stands in that arena is a shade, a golden echo of him, and it is worth being exact about what it does and does not do, because this encounter is very often described as something it is not. He fights with the axe. He stomps and the ground breaks. He throws the axe and calls it back. The lion stays on his back the entire time, and he never speaks a single word, and when you beat him, he simply fades. No transformation, no name change, no lion thrown to the floor. That comes later, in a version of this room with the sky burned out, and the difference between the two encounters is the whole point of him. You are looking at a memory of the founder, the strongest figure this world ever produced, reduced to a silent, golden replay of himself, standing in the stairwell of the capital he built, guarding the road to the throne room where a king he never knew about is waiting. Because the man actually holding this city, the one who has held it through catastrophe after catastrophe while the family scattered and died, is somebody the citizens below have never been permitted to see. This is the middle of the climb, and what comes next is the saddest thing in this game. Whatever brought you to the lore den tonight, whether it is the lore or simply the sound of somebody talking quietly for a couple of hours, I am glad of the company for this one. At the top of Landel, under the roots of the Erdtree itself, there is a throne room, and on the steps of it is a figure in a cloak with a staff, and he greets you with a phrase you have heard before: "Willful traitors all, thy kind are all of a piece. Pillagers, emboldened by the flame of ambition, emboldened by the flame of ambition." That is the same line, word for word, that a cloaked figure on a foggy bridge said to you outside Stormvale Castle at the very beginning of this journey, before he introduced himself as Margit the Fell. He is not quoting himself for effect. He is the same person, and he has been the same person the whole time. The game proves this in 3 ways, and the third is the one that settles it. The first is that line. The second is the shackle, sold by an untrustworthy man in a cave, which describes a golden fetish made to keep a particular omen under strictest confinement. And the third is that the shackle works here too. You can use the item bought to bind Margit on the king sitting at the Elden throne, and he will freeze, because as far as the game's own machinery is concerned, there's only one prisoner, and this is his restraint. Morgoth is an omen. That means he was born without the grace of the Erdtree, with horns growing through his skin and a tail behind him, into a world where that is understood as a curse rather than a birth. What happens to omen children is one of the quietest atrocities in this story. Omen babies have all their horns excised, a process most of them do not survive. The ones born to the royal line are spared that, and what they receive instead is worse. They keep their horns, and they are kept underground, unbeknownst to anyone, bound by shackles for eternity. That is where he grew up. Beneath the city, he would later defend, in the dark, in chains, along with his brother, in a place the capital above does not officially know exists. He got out, and he took the city, and he ruled it. Not openly. He ruled veiled as a monarch nobody was permitted to look at because the capital of the Golden Order could not be told that its king was one of the cursed things it buries. He fought off every tarnished who came for the throne. He held Landell through the shattering, through the war, through the deaths of his entire family, alone, wearing a hood under a name he made up. And in the intervals, he went down to Stormvale and stood on a bridge in the fog as Margit, killing champions on the road, hundreds of miles from his capital, because stopping them early was more efficient than stopping them late. The fight is the hardest in the base game, up to that point, and it is beautiful. In the first half, he wields a cursed curved sword that makes you bleed, and out of the empty air he pulls golden weapons, a dagger, a spear shaped like the tree, a colossal hammer, a knight's sword, each one a spectral copy of a real armament, each one made of holy light. He is an omen, the antithesis of the Golden Order by birth, throwing that order's own sacred weapons at you. At about half health, the room floods. Water rises across the floor of the throne room, and his blade catches fire, and the fire is made of blood. That detail is the one most often reported wrongly, so it is worth stating plainly. There is no rot in this fight, and there never was. What Morgo uses in his second phase is blood flame, which is fire and hemorrhage together, and where it comes from is the most upsetting thing about him. His sword's description explains it. The accursed blood that Morgo recanted and sealed away reformed into this blade. He renounced his own blood, the cursed inheritance that made him an omen, that got him chained under a city as an infant, he formally rejected and sealed away, because that is what a servant of the Golden Order does with a thing like that. And it did not go anywhere. It compressed into a weapon, and he carries it. And when the fight goes badly enough, he draws on the exact part of himself he spent his life denying, and it is the strongest thing he has. Then he dies, and the tree keeps a remembrance of him, and the remembrance is 4 sentences long, and I do not think this game ever wrote anything better. Though born one of the graceless omen, Morgo took it upon himself to become the Erdtree's protector. He loved not in return, for he was never loved, but nevertheless, love it he did. Read it again slowly. He was never loved. The Erdtree did not love him. The city did not love him. The family did not love him. The faith that produced him classified him at birth as an accursed thing to be hidden underground. He knew that. The sentence is explicit that the love went one direction only, and that he understood the arithmetic perfectly well. And he loved it anyway, took it upon himself, unprompted, unasked, unthanked, to become the protector of the thing that had no use for him. His last words are not defiant. Tarnished, thou'rt but a fool, he says. The Erdtree wards off all who deign approach. We are all forsaken. Not you are forsaken. We are. In the final second of his life, the veiled king of Landell puts himself in the same category as the intruder who killed him, and as everybody else, and as, by implication, the whole of the Golden Order he died holding together. He is right, and he is the first character in this story honest enough to say it out loud. There were 2 of them in the dark under the capital. The other one is Moog, and where Morgo climbed out of the shunning grounds and spent his life trying to be worthy of the thing that discarded him, Moog went the other way entirely. He stayed underground, went further down, and found something else to belong to. You can fight him twice, in 2 different places, and these are genuinely 2 separate encounters, rather than one repeated, which is worth saying because they are frequently conflated. The first is optional and easy to miss. Deep beneath Landell, in the sewers where the omen are hidden and the discarded things of the Golden City end up, there is a cathedral called the Cathedral of the Forsaken, and in it is Moog, the omen. This version of him has no wings, no ritual, no second phase, and no ceremony of any kind. He is a large horned man with a trident in a room under a sewer, and he is immune to every status effect in the game, and he fights until he stops. That is all. It is the plainest possible version of him, at home, in the place he was born. The second is in a palace, and the palace is his own. Mogwin is not on the surface. It is deep underground, far to the east of the buried cities, an island of ancient ruins, standing in a lake of blood, and the map's own description of it is the clearest statement of his ambition anywhere in the game. In the lightless depths lies the grave of an ancient civilization. It is here Moog, the Lord of Blood, is building his palace to be the seat of his coming dynasty named Mogwin. He is building, present tense, in a grave. The Omen were buried beneath a city and told they were a curse, and Moog's answer was not to seek forgiveness from the order that did it. It was to go somewhere the order could not see, find a different god, and start a bloodline of his own, with its own name and its own capital and its own nobility. Every follower down there is a member of a dynasty that has existed for one generation and has no territory above ground. The god he found is called the Formless Mother, also called the Mother of Truth, and she is an outer god, entirely outside the golden arrangement. What she gave him was fire in his blood. What she wants is written on his spear, and it is 5 words. The Mother of Truth desires a wound. Not worship, not a temple, a wound. She is a god whose entire liturgy is injury, and Moog's blood rituals are how you pray to something like that. The fight is theater. He is enormous, red, winged, holding a trident, and throughout the first half he stops periodically to raise the spear and count. 3, 2, 1. Each time he does it, rings of blood settle over you, and you have no way to remove them. When the count finishes, he drives the trident down 3 times, saying the same word each time, nothing, 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 and each strike tears a piece of your health away and puts it into him. You cannot dodge it. You cannot block it. It simply happens, and if you have not prepared for it in advance, it kills you. Then he opens his wings, and the second half begins. What he was actually doing down there is the part that recontextualizes him, and the remembrance states it without any softening. Wishing to raise Mikola to full godhood, Moog wished to be his consort, taking the role of monarch. But no matter how much of his bloody bedchamber he tried to share, he received no response from the young Empyrean. There is a cocoon hanging in his mausoleum. Inside it is a sleeping boy, an Empyrean cursed with eternal childhood, whom Moog cut out of a golden tree hundreds of miles north and carried down here. And the plan, in Moog's mind, was a coronation. Raise him to godhood, stand beside him as consort and monarch, and the dynasty in the grave becomes the dynasty of the world. He drenched the room in blood to wake him. He commanded his followers to bleed into it. He talks to the cocoon before the fight starts, warmly. Dearest Mikola, he says, you must abide alone a while, and then he turns to you and welcomes you as an honored guest to the birthplace of his dynasty. He received no response, not a refusal, not a word, not once. He built a kingdom and a religion and a bedchamber around a child who never answered him, and the remembrance records the silence rather than the crime. There is a further turn to this, and it comes much later and from a different direction, so I want to mark it clearly rather than smuggle it in. In the realm of shadow, it becomes apparent that the boy in the cocoon was never quite the victim this scene suggests, and that Moog's obsession may not have started with Moog at all. We will get there when the road does. For now, on the base game's own terms, what you have is an omen who was buried, who dug further down instead of climbing out, and who died holding a vigil over somebody who never once spoke to him. To get any further, you have to go up, and up means a lift at a place called Rolled, and beyond it, the world turns white and stops. The mountaintops of the giants are a graveyard for a war that ended so long ago the snow has had time to bury it, and the bodies are still lying where they fell. Everything up here is either frozen, on fire, or waiting. On the bridge to a divine tower, a black fog comes down, and two omen are standing in it. They are called the Fell Twins, and they are not the brothers we have just spent 2 chapters with, which is worth saying because the name invites the confusion. These are 2 other cursed people, and the specific detail the game gives them is the thing that makes them worth stopping for. One of them is described as strongly accursed, with its horns intact, coating its cleaver in wraiths. The other has had its horns excised. One was born royal enough to keep them, and one was not. The one with the horns was shackled somewhere. The one without survived a procedure that kills most of the infants it is performed on. They are standing on the same bridge, in the same fog, guarding the same tower, and the game has quietly put the 2 halves of the omen sentence side by side and said nothing about it. And what they leave behind when they fall is worse. The item is a spirit you can summon, and the spirit is Omen Killer Rollo, known as the first Omen Killer. Once a famous perfumer, Rollo imbibed a physic to rid himself of emotion, thus enabling him to enact his nightmarish labor, hunting the omen. A man who made perfume drank something to remove his feelings so that he could do this work. Not a soldier, not a fanatic. A perfumer who understood exactly what he was about to do and knew he could not do it while he still felt things, and solved that problem chemically. And 2 omen died on a bridge in the snow, and what remains of them is his ghost, ready to fight for you further into the white. There is a castle with a broken sun on its banners, and a man at the top of it who has bought himself an army. Commander Niall opens by summoning 2 knights, and then does almost nothing. He stands back and buffs them while they fight you, frost coming off their blades, and he will not properly engage until they are dead or he is badly hurt. Players find this infuriating, and it is completely in character because of what his prosthesis says. Commander Neil, veteran of Castle Saul, offered this prosthesis in exchange for the lives of the defeated knights held prisoner. He went on to lead these men as an army of no nation. He gave away his leg to buy prisoners of war off whoever was going to execute them. Then those men followed him, and since none of them had a country anymore, the force he built belonged to nothing and no one, an army of no nation, holding a castle on a frozen mountain for no state that still exists. And in the fight, he hangs back and protects the knights and lets them do the fighting and only steps forward when they are gone. He is still buying their lives in the only currency he has left. Elsewhere in the snow, there are others keeping older appointments. Borealis, an ice dragon in a frozen lake, one of the lords of the mountaintops before the fire giants, chased them from the peak, still occupying the ground it lost. Knights of Zamor, tall and masked and wrapped in freezing wind, whose weapons are styled after icy wind in apparent devotion to winter, and who are described as the mortal enemies of the fire giants since time immemorial. Their hatred predates the war they are famous for. They did not join Marika's campaign because they were loyal to her. They joined because the fire giants were already theirs to hate, and out past the cemeteries, sometimes only at night, there are the deathrite birds, enormous carrion things wreathed in a pale flame that is not fire. Their sorcery explains what that flame is, and it is one of the oldest facts in this world. In the time when there was no Erdtree, death was burned in ghost flame. Deathbirds were the keepers of that fire. Before the golden tree, before grace, before any of the machinery this entire story runs on, there was a way of handling the dead, and it involved burning them in a cold flame, and these birds were its priesthood. The spear their keepers carried says the rite of death also serves as an oath sworn to their distant resurrection. They are still holding the oath. The religion that replaced theirs is on fire behind them, and they are out in the snow at night, tending a fire for a resurrection that has not been scheduled. At the top of everything, there is a giant sitting beside a forge. The fire giant is the last of his kind. There was a war, the giants lost it, and their forge, in which burns the one flame capable of destroying the Erdtree, could not be put out. So Marika did the next best thing, and the remembrance the tree keeps of him quotes her sentence directly. Upon realizing the flames of their forge would never die, Queen Marika marked him with a curse. O trifling giant, mayest thou tend thy flame for eternity. That is not an execution, it is a job. She could not extinguish the fire, so she condemned the last survivor of the people she had just destroyed to sit next to it and keep it forever alone on a mountain in the snow. He has done it. That is the part that stops you. He is enormous and ancient, and one of his legs is ruined, and there is a second face in his abdomen, the mark of the fell god the giants worshipped, and he has been up here tending a fire he cannot leave and cannot let out for longer than the current religion has existed. When you fight him, he rolls because he cannot walk properly. When you take his leg, he kneels and keeps fighting from the ground. And the incantation drawn from his people's power contains the only mercy in the entire arrangement. The fire giants borrowed from the power of a fell god, and still they were defeated. Yet their failure released them from their solitary curse to serve as keepers of the flame for eternity. Killing him ends the sentence. That is the closest thing to a kindness anybody performs in this chapter, and you are only doing it because you need what he is guarding. Far to the north, past a snowfield, past a town where you have to solve a puzzle with statues to get through, there is a tree that somebody grew on purpose. The halig tree was planted by a child, Mikola, an Empyrean cursed with eternal childhood, watered a sapling with his own blood, and grew it into a second tree, and the point of it was sanctuary. The Albinorics, who were hunted, the misbegotten, who were enslaved, everybody the Golden Order produced, and then discarded, was supposed to come here and be safe. It is dying. The branches you walk along are gray, and the water in the roots is red, and the entire lower half of the structure has rotted through, and inside the sanctuary city, built at its heart, almost everyone is dead or dissolving. At the outermost gate, so there is a knight on horseback who left a royal house to find this place, and we have met her before, in a moonlit garden hundreds of miles south. Loretta is here, on duty, with the same bow and the same sickle, regilded in unalloyed gold, defending the outer approach of the sanctuary she went looking for. She's the first thing between you and the tree's center, and she's doing the job she chose after abandoning the one she was given. At the bottom, in a chamber under everything, is the reason the tree is rotting. Malenia introduces herself before the fight in a line that turns out to be the saddest sentence in the game once you know what it is standing on. I am Malenia, she says, Blade of Mikola. And I have never known defeat. She is Mikola's twin sister. The remembrance is explicit about their shared origin and about what it cost them. Mikola and Malenia are both the children of a single god. As such, they are both Empyreans, but suffered afflictions from birth. One was cursed with eternal childhood, and the other harbored rot within. A single god. Their mother and their father were the same being, which is a fact this story has been circling for a very long time, and will confirm outright in a few hours, and the consequence was that both children came out damaged. He stopped growing. She was born with the scarlet rot inside her body and has been losing to it, slowly, her entire life. Her right arm is gone, her left leg is gone, her right foot is gone. Whether the rot took them or a battle did is not stated anywhere, and anyone who tells you which is guessing. She is also, in a way the fight makes you feel rather than tells you, frighteningly good at this. The rule you need is that blocking does not work. Every hit she lands restores her health, and a hit landed on your raised shield counts. You cannot turtle, you cannot wait. The one thing this genre teaches you to do when frightened is the thing that loses this fight, and the game does not explain that anywhere. Her signature is a leap into the air, a hover, and then a long descending sequence of flurries that chase you across the room, re-aiming with each burst. It is the most notorious attack in modern action games, and it kills people who have already beaten every other boss in this world, and then you win, and her health empties, and she gets back up. The second phase is not triggered by a health threshold. You have to actually kill her first. She falls, and a cutscene plays, and she rises with enormous wings, and the first thing she does, every single time, is bloom. A vast flower opens where she lands, and the room fills with rot, which brings us to the count. The description of that bloom is the most quietly horrifying piece of arithmetic in the game. Each time the scarlet flower blooms, Malenia's rot advances. It has bloomed twice already. With the third bloom, she will become a true goddess. The first bloom was Caelid. She used it against her half-brother, and it ruined a region permanently and put her into a coma. The second is the one happening in front of you, in this room, in this fight, because you came here. The third would finish the process and make her a god, and the base game never gets there. She is counting down to her own transformation, and she has no way to stop it, and every time she is forced to defend herself, the number goes up. And underneath all of that is why she is in this room at all. Her helm, made of the unalloyed gold her brother's order used to ward off outer gods, carries a memory. Malenia awaited Miquella at the foot of the husk. My brother will keep his promise. He possesses the wisdom, the allure of a god. He is the most fearsome Empyrean of all. She was waiting for him. Her knights carried her home from Caelid in a coma, and she slept at the base of the tree, and the rot leaked out of her while she was unconscious and poisoned the sanctuary her brother had built for the world's rejects. And while she slept, somebody cut the tree open and took him away, and she woke up in a rotting building with no brother in it, so she stayed. That is what the fight actually is. The greatest warrior of her generation, guarding the doorway of an empty sanctuary, at the bottom of a dying tree, defending a promise made by a boy who is not coming back, because waiting is the only remaining form her loyalty can take. I have never known defeat, she says. She has lost her limbs, her health, and her sanctuary, her war, and her brother. The claim is true only in the narrowest possible sense, and she holds it because it is the last thing she has that nobody has taken. When she finally falls, a flower is left standing in the room. You burn the Erdtree. That is what the flame on the mountain was for, and when it is done, the world goes dark, and you wake up somewhere that should not exist. Crumbling Farum Azula is a city in the sky, tearing itself apart in slow motion, with entire districts hanging in the air and drifting away as you watch. It is outside time. The storm around it never resolves, and on the path through it, before the great rotundum at its heart, there is a beast in a mask praying over something. The health bar says Beast Clergyman, and if you have been to a certain sanctuary in Caelid, you have met him before, though you did not know it. There is a creature there called Godrick, sitting in a chair, who asks you to bring him deathroot and gives you gifts for it, and grows less coherent every time you do. That is the same being. When you fed him, you were feeding this. He fights you with a small dagger and a great deal of speed, and it goes badly for him, and then he stops and says 6 words that change the shape of the room. O death, would ye become my blade once more? And he reaches into his own body and pulls out a sword. Malekith is a shadow-bound beast, and he is Marika's shadow, which is a real office in this world, rather than a description. He is also her half-brother, and the entire architecture of the Golden Order, the thing every character in this story has been living inside, exists because of one task he performed for her. There was a rune inside the Elden Ring called Destined Death. It is exactly what it sounds like. It is the part of the world's underlying law that makes death final. Marika had it removed and gave it to him, and he sealed it inside his blade, and that is why the demigods you have been killing all night were effectively immortal, and why an order could be built on the promise that nothing beloved ever truly ends. The remembrance the tree keeps of him is 3 sentences, and the last one is a knife. Malekith was a shadow-bound beast given to his Empyrean. Marika's sole need of her shadow was a vessel to lock away destined death. Even then, she betrayed him. Her only use for him was as a container. Not a brother, not a knight, not a servant, a place to put something. And even at that reduced valuation, having already been treated as furniture, he was still betrayed. What the betrayal actually was is never explained, and I would rather leave the gap open than fill it, because the sentence works better as it stands. He was owed almost nothing, and he did not get even that. Then somebody robbed him. On a night this story keeps returning to, Ranni stole a fragment of death out of that blade and had it forged into knives, and those knives were used on her half-brother Godwyn. And what happened to Godwyn is the single most important death in the game, because it went wrong in a very specific way. The curse mark records it precisely. This curse mark was carved at the moment of death of the first demigod, and should have taken the shape of a circle. However, 2 demigods perished at the same time, breaking the curse mark into 2 half-wheels. Ranni was the first of the demigods whose flesh perished, while the Prince of Death perished in soul alone. 2 deaths, simultaneous, each incomplete. She killed her own body and left her soul. The knives killed his soul and left his body. And a body with no soul, in a world where death itself had been locked in a sword, could not do the one thing a corpse is supposed to do. It stayed. It changed. It sprouted, and the roots that came out of it spread under the whole world, and that is Deathroot, and that is what Gurink has been eating. Malekith's response to the theft tells you everything about him. His blade's description says that after a fragment of death was stolen on that fateful night, Malekith bound the blade within his own flesh, such that none might ever rob death again. He put it inside his own body. Not a vault, not a tower, not a guarded room. He carried it in himself, permanently, so that stealing it would require killing him first. And that is why the first phase of this fight is a beast with a knife, scrabbling and desperate, because his actual weapon is sewn into his chest, and drawing it means opening himself up. When he does, the fight becomes something else entirely. He moves like nothing else in the game, launching off the pillars, crossing the arena in a single motion, and his attacks do something no other boss can. They take your maximum health away, not damage, capacity. The bar itself shrinks, and healing cannot reach what he has removed, and that is destined death rendered as a mechanic, the thing that makes an ending final, working exactly as advertised. He earned a name for this. Among the demigods, we are told, there was not one who did not fear Malekith and his blade, and his name came to mean the death of the demigods. And here is what killing him actually does, which is routinely stated backwards. You do not destroy the rune of death. You unbind it. It goes back into the world, Everything that was protected from a real ending stops being protected, and the consequence is not confined to this room. It is why the sky is coming apart, and why everything after this feels like a collapse rather than a climb. You will meet one more group in this city on the way, and they are the punchline to his whole existence. The Godskin duo are an apostle and a noble fighting together over a shared pool of health, and if you kill one, the other will simply raise it again, so the only way through is to drain them together. They were the Glomide Queen's people, wielders of a black flame that could kill gods, and their hoods explain what happened to them. The apostles, once said to serve destined death, are wielders of the god-slaying black flame. But after their defeat by Malekith, the Black Blade, the source of their power was sealed away. He beat them, and then he sealed the thing their power came from, and they have spent every year since as a weapon with no ammunition, still hunting gods, still burning, still unable to finish anything. There is a way to get somewhere in this city that almost nobody finds on their own. From a bridge near the center, you take a lift down, and then you go outside onto the cliffs, and then you walk to the southwestern edge and look over it, and drop, twice, onto ledges you cannot see from above. Then you follow a chain of floating rocks out into open air toward a tornado, and on a curved platform you find a hollow in the stone floor with no bones in it, unlike all the others around it. And the game offers you the option to lie down. You lie down in the stone, and the platform travels, and when you stand up, you are somewhere else and someone else, at the heart of the storm, and there is a dragon here with more heads than it should have, and fewer than it used to. Placidusax is not simply an old dragon. He held the title you have spent this entire game trying to earn. His remembrance is short, and contains one of the few genuinely vertiginous facts in this world. The Dragon Lord whose seat lies at the heart of the storm beyond time is said to have been Elden Lord in the age before the Erdtree. Once his god was fled, the Lord continued to await its return. There was an age before the Erdtree. Everything you have walked through tonight, the Golden Order, the Grace, the demigods, the entire religion that produced every tragedy we have walked past, is the second arrangement. Before it there was another one, with its own god and its own Elden Lord, and that Elden Lord is lying in front of you. His god fled, not died, not was overthrown, not was killed by the greater will in some war we could reconstruct. The word the game uses is fled, and then it stops, and it never tells you who that god was. I want to be firm about this, because it is one of the most heavily theorized gaps in the game, and the theories are presented online with great confidence. The name of Placidusax's god does not exist. It is not in an item, not in dialogue, not in a cutscene. What the game gives you is 3 facts. There was a god, it left. He never stopped waiting. He has 2 heads now. You can see the stumps where the others were, and the common count is that there were 5. 2 of the missing ones turn up much later, in another country, still attached to the thing that tore them off him, and we will get there. The third is simply unaccounted for. So here is the arrangement. A dragon with half his heads torn away, lying in a pocket of frozen time outside the world, in the seat of an office that no longer exists, guarding a room with nothing in it, for a god who left so long ago that the religion which replaced his has itself now collapsed. He does not have a horde. He does not have a purpose you could argue with. He is not protecting a rune or a gate or a corpse. He is at his post, and when you disturb him, he fights you with everything he has, which is considerable. He teleports through thunderclouds. He breathes golden fire out of both remaining heads and narrows it into sweeping beams. He is one of the hardest optional fights in the game, and he is optional, and you had to lie down in a hole in the floor of a broken city to find him. The incantation drawn from his remembrance is called Placidusax's Ruin, and its description does not describe an attack. These are the dying wails of the Dragon Lord who once dwelled eternally beyond time. That is what his greatest power is in the end, not a weapon, a recording of him grieving. Everything in this world that was built to guard something has outlived the thing it was guarding. The knight is on an empty road. The avatars protect saplings of a tree you have already burned. The commander raises a banner over a dead army in a poisoned swamp. And here, at the bottom of a hole outside time, is the purest version of it. A lord holding the throne of a vanished age for a god who is not coming back, and who has not been coming back for so long that his waiting has become the oldest continuous act in the world. You kill him for a remembrance and a sword. Nothing about his situation changes. Nobody learns he is gone. The capital is gray now. You burned the tree, and the ash came down over everything, and Landell is the same city with the color taken out of it, and the road up to the throne is the road you have already walked. At the top of it, in the room where a veiled king told you that everybody is forsaken, somebody is waiting who has come a very long way to be here. Alas, I am returned, to be granted audience once more, upon my name as Godfrey, the first Elden Lord. This is not the golden shade from the stairwell. This is the man. Godfrey is the first consort of Queen Marika, and the first Elden Lord of the Golden Order. And before either of those titles, he was Huara Lu, a chieftain out of the Badlands, from outside this world entirely. He came here, he fought for her, he won, and he was crowned. And the price of the crown is the thing that makes him worth the wait. When he vowed to become a lord, he took onto his back a golden lion called Sarosh. You have been looking at that lion all night. It was engraved on the shield the tutorial monster carried, before you knew a single name in this story. It was stamped on the axe Godrick swung in Stormvale, representing a strength he did not have and could not inherit. It was painted on the armor of a boy in Caelid, who was naturally captivated by the lord of the battlefield and grew up to hold the stars still. 4 times this world has shown you the same beast in the hands of people reaching for something, and now here he is, on the original, in person. And what Sarosh is doing there is holding him back. The lion rides on Godfrey's shoulders and grips him, and the widely accepted reading, which comes from the animation rather than from a quoted line, is that Sarosh exists to suppress his ceaseless lust for battle. That is what a lord in this order requires, not strength, restraint. The founder of the golden lineage could only be permitted to be a king if something was physically attached to him to keep him from being what he actually is. Then he was thrown away. The remembrance is careful about this sequence, and the sequence is the cruel part. When Godfrey, first Elden Lord, was robbed of his grace, becoming tarnished, he took with him his kinfolk and left the lands between. He was robbed of it. Marika stripped the grace out of him and out of everyone who followed him, which is what makes them the first tarnished, the first of the same category you are, and then he was sent away to wage war in a land afar. Why she did it is never stated anywhere in this game. The most common reading is that a conquering lord is useless to an order that has finished conquering, and the axe supports that reading with a line that sounds like an epitaph for an entire era. In the days of the past, a crown was warranted with strength. Then, at some point out there, the march ended, and the remembrance records what he did about it. Godfrey divested himself of kingship, becoming a simple warrior once more. He gave the title back. Nobody took it from him the second time. So the fight goes like this. The first half is Godfrey, Elden Lord, with the enormous axe and the earthquakes, and the lion on his back, fighting the way a king is supposed to fight. And when he has taken enough, he stops, and he speaks to the animal that has been restraining him for the entire history of the Golden Order. That will be all. Thou didst me good service, Sarosh. I have given thee courtesy enough. And he tears the lion off his back and kills it, throws the axe away, and says the only line he has been waiting the whole game to say. Now I fight as Huara Lu, warrior. What follows is a man with no weapon and no title grappling you with his bare hands, throwing you across the room, slamming you into the floor, stamping the ground until it breaks. Every trapping of lordship, the axe, the crown, the counselor, discarded on the tiles behind him, because the thing underneath all of it was always a chieftain from somewhere else who was extremely good at this and was asked to stop. When he loses, he's not bitter about it. Brave tarnished, he says, thy strength befits a crown. He gives you the thing that was taken from him in a sentence without complaint, and behind him, inside the burned tree, is the last of it. You walk into the trunk and find a woman held in the air, bound, motionless, and she is the god this entire world runs on. Marika the Eternal, imprisoned inside her own Erdtree. And as you watch, she is released, and her hair turns red, and her dress becomes a skirt, and the body reconfigures into a tall, red-haired man holding a hammer, and there was never a second person in the room. Radagon is Marika. The game does not treat this as a twist to be revealed in dialogue. It shows you, on screen, uncut, one body becoming the other, and only afterwards does it let you find the confirmations. There is a statue of Radagon in a study hall made by a sculptor who discovered in the process of making it that Radagon is Marika, and if you cast the sorcery that reverts things to their true state at that statue, it turns into her in front of you. It is the only piece of lore in this game the player can personally demonstrate on demand, and Marika says it herself in the words that hang over the whole ending. O Radagon, leal hound of the Golden Order, thou art yet to become me, thou art yet to become a god. Let us be shattered both. Mine other self, everything reorganizes around that. The red-haired champion who fought Renala to a standstill in Liurnia and married her and gave her 3 children, and then abandoned her for a position in the capital, and the queen who offered him that position were the same being. Malenia and Mikala were born to one god wearing 2 faces, which is why the remembrance says a single god, and why both children came out broken. And the hammer he is holding is the confession. Marika's hammer is a Newman tool from outside the lands between, which she brought with her from home, and its description states what it was used for without any ceremony at all. The tool with which Queen Marika shattered the Elden Ring, and Radagon attempted to repair it. The hammer partially broke upon shattering the ring. She smashed it. He is trying to fix it with the same hammer, which broke when she used it. That is the fight. A god at war with the other half of itself, one half having destroyed the thing the world was built on, and the other half kneeling in the wreckage, trying to put it back together with the broken instrument of its destruction, and neither half able to stop the other because they share a body. And when he falls, he does not fall. His corpse is taken up and reshaped and turned into a sword, and something enormous unfolds out of the light behind him. The Elden Beast is described in a single line. It was the vassal beast of the greater will and living incarnation of the concept of order. It is not a person. There is no name, no dialogue, no grievance, no history you could sympathize with. It is the concept itself, given a body, and the body is a vast golden thing that swims away from you through shallow water, over and over, refusing engagement, firing rings of light. It fights like an idea avoiding examination, and the weapon in its hand is the god you just killed. The description of that sword is the last quiet devastation of the base game. Sword wrought from the remains of a god who should have lived a life eternal, should have. The whole order existed to make sure that sentence could never be written, and the being enforcing that order is holding the counterexample and using it on you. What the beast is guarding is a ring that has already been shattered, in a tree that has already burned, on behalf of a will that has not been heard from in a very long time. It is the last and largest instance of the thing this entire night has been describing, and it is the only one that never had a face to lose. There is a second country attached to this one in the shadow of the tree, and you get there by touching a withered arm in a cocoon and being pulled through. The land of shadow is where the Golden Order buried its own beginning, and the reason to come here is that a boy walked this way before you and left a trail. All across this country, there are small stone crosses, and each one has a line carved on it, and read in sequence. They are the most methodical act of self destruction in this story. I abandon here the first of the flesh of my body. I abandon here my arm sinistral. I abandon here my heart. I abandon here my eye. I abandon here my doubt and vacillation. I abandon here my love. I abandon here my arm dextral. I abandon here the last of the flesh of my body. And at the top, at the threshold of the gate he was walking toward, I abandon here all my fears. Mikala is stripping himself down to nothing on the way to becoming a god. His flesh, his limbs, his heart, his eye, his doubt, his love, his fear, and separately his great rune, which he relinquished entirely. The rune's description explains the intent. Mikala set off for the tower, enshrouded by shadow, abandoning everything, his golden flesh, his blinding strength, even his fate, all in an effort to bury the original sin, and to embrace the whole of it, and be reborn as a new god. What the original sin actually is, this expansion names twice and defines never. Hold that as a genuine gap rather than a puzzle with a hidden answer. The things guarding this country are, almost without exception, guarding pieces of him or the wreckage of what was done here. At the gate of a tower settlement, there is a beast made of storm and lightning that dances. The divine beast. Dancing lion is not an animal. It is a ritual costume worn by sculpted keepers, performed at a tower festival by the horned people who lived here, and the head it leaves behind carries a line that tells you the festival is over. Alas, it no longer responds to the old woman's earnest prayer. There is an old woman nearby, one of the last of those people, and she sets the beast on you because she believes you belong to the family that burned her country. A curse upon the strumpet's progeny, she says, upon Marika's children, each and all. She is not confused. She is just old and wrong about which of Marika's children you are. In a castle on the road, there is a knight with two swords, one holding blue moonlight and one holding fire, and she is a genuine surprise if you have been paying attention in Liurnia. R'hllana is Renala's younger sister, not her daughter, not a variant, not a second version of the queen in the library. The sorcery she leaves behind establishes it plainly, describing twin moons she and her elder sister, Renalis, met in childhood, overlapping as though nestled against one another, and her helm records what she did with her life. Renala, head of the royal family of Caria, was said to have given her younger sister, who renounced her lineage to chase after Mesmer, a gift of lustrous black hair. She gave up the Carian name and came to the Shadow Country for a man with fire in him. Her sister's response to that was not to disown her, it was to send hair, and her twin blades, moon in one hand and flame in the other, carry the only romantic sentence in this entire expansion. Here and here alone were moon and fire ever together. Whether that means what everybody assumes it means is not stated anywhere, and I will leave it where the game leaves it. Elsewhere, there are quieter horrors. In a mausoleum on the plain, reachable within the first 10 minutes, there is a knight who kills most people who wander in, and his great sword explains what he traded for the ability to do that. Through a secret rite, they relinquished their hearts for heightened battle prowess. They gave up their hearts. The order is named for solitude, and the rite is the removal of the organ, and the game leaves the literalness of that deliberately open. Down in a fissure in the earth, At the bottom of a garden of purple flowers, there is a knight fused to a skeletal horse guarding a sleeping figure. The remembrance of it is one sentence, and it is lovely. All tainted flesh eventually becomes putrescence, and this clump of it imbibed St. Trina's nectar, which granted it eternal rest. And so it was that putrescence became her knight, wrought with nothing left to be, given rest by something kind, and choosing to stand guard over the thing that was kind to it. What it is guarding is the piece of Mikola that was left at the cross reading, "I abandon here my love." Saint Trina is that piece, and she is the one voice in this expansion, actively trying to stop what is happening. "Make Mikola stop," she says. "Do not turn the poor thing into a god. Godhood would be Mikola's prison. A caged divinity is beyond saving. The discarded love of the boy who is ascending is begging you to kill him for his own sake." And in a ruin of enormous stone fingers, far underground beneath a cathedral, there is the thing that reframes the entire religion of the world above. Metyr is the mother of all the two fingers, the trembling stone hands that have been relaying the will of a distant god to every ruler in this story. She is described as a magnificently gleaming daughter of the greater will, and the first shooting star to fall upon the lands between. She came down here at the very beginning as the point of contact between a god beyond the sky and the world underneath it, and everything the Golden Order ever did began with instructions passed through her. She is broken. Her body is damaged. The microcosm she used to receive through is cracked, and she is at the bottom of a hole nobody has visited in an age. And the staff made from her tail carries the sentence that this entire night has been building toward. The mother received signs from the greater will, from the beyond of the microcosm. Despite being broken and abandoned, she kept waiting for another message to come. That is the whole thing, stated as plainly as this game has ever stated anything. Broken and abandoned, and still waiting for a message. What follows from that is where I want to be careful, because the popular reading has hardened into a claim the game does not make. You will hear that this proves the Two Fingers' guidance was noise, that every command Marika and the demigods obeyed was invented static from a broken relay. The text does not say that. It says she was damaged, that she was abandoned, and that she kept waiting. Whether anything came through afterwards, and what the fingers did in the silence, the expansion leaves alone. The scholar who sends you down here calls her damaged and unhinged, but he is a character with an agenda, not a narrator, and he wants her position. Out on the highlands, there is a commander on a boar who is a friend of somebody we buried a long time ago tonight, and his sorcery is the only warm thing in this country. Gaius and Radon were good rivals in their youth, and this sorcery is a product of their friendly competition. Two boys competing at gravity magic. One of them ended up eating corpses on a beach, and the other ended up here, and they never saw each other again. Everything in the Shadow Country eventually points at one man, and he is inside a keep, in a chamber lit by his own fire. Mesmer is a son of Marika. That much is confirmed, and it is the only part of his parentage that is. Who his father was is never stated anywhere, by anybody, and the assumption that everybody makes is only that. He was born with something inside him. The remembrance is the clearest account of what was done about it, and it is a short, horrible sentence. A malevolent snake writhed within Mesmer, and so his very mother plucked out his eye and put in its place a seal of grace. Yet having done so, her fear compelled her to secret away her child within the realm of shadow. She took out his eye. She put a seal of golden grace into the socket to hold the serpent down. And then, having successfully contained it, she was still frightened enough of her own child that she hid him in another country and sent him to war. What the serpent means is not explained. Where it came from is not explained. This is deliberate, and the confident accounts you will find of what it represents are all filling in the same blank with different guesses. He was given a job, and the job was a purge. Marika charged him with destroying the horned people who lived in the Shadow Country and did not carry the light of grace, and he did it thoroughly, and their tower is a ruin, and their festival is a costume with nobody left to wear it. Everything broken in this country traces back to him following her orders, and she stopped answering. At some point, contact simply ended, and he continued anyway, because the alternative was admitting the whole thing had been for nothing. When you finally reach him, he is not defiant. He asks a question, and the question it's aimed past you at somebody who is not there. Mother, he says, wouldst thou truly lordship sanction in one so bereft of light? Then, immediately, before any answer can fail to arrive, he steadies himself. Yet my purpose standeth unchanged. He fights with fire, and at half health he reaches into his own chest and tears out the seal his mother put there, and the serpent comes out, and he becomes the thing she was afraid of, because it is the only weapon he has left. The incantation made from him is the saddest single line in the expansion. Mesmer despised his own fire. Time and time again he hoped to rid himself of it, but ever did it burn. He hated it. The defining attribute of his entire existence, the thing that made him useful and made him feared and got him exiled, he spent his life trying to be rid of, and it would not go out. There is one more thing in his kindling, and it is a whisper. Mesmer, much like his younger sister, bore a vision of fire. It does not name her. Everyone knows who it means, and the woman it means has walked a great deal of this journey beside you and asked you to burn a tree. The expansion declines to close the loop by a single word, and I think that is on purpose. His last words are not to you, Mother, Marika, a curse upon thee. The people his crusade produced are scattered across the country behind him. In a burned church in the old ruins, there is a saint who found something in the fire. Romina's church was destroyed in the purge, and in the wreckage she took hold of a grotesque divinity and became a thing of rot and centipede and butterfly. What she has with her is the detail that lands. Her butterflies are described as the wings of the goddess of rot, and the line reads, bereft of a master, they were soothed by Romina, who reached out to them. Those are malenias. Somewhere between a rotting tree in the far north and a burned church in another country, the scraps of a dead woman's power drifted loose with nobody to belong to, and a victim of Mesmer's fire took them in. And in a manor in a forest so drenched in madness that your horse refuses to enter it, there is a man who has been tortured for a very long time by people who were right to be afraid of him. Midra had the frenzied flame in him. The horned people detected it and ran a golden greatsword through his body, a weapon made for an execution like no other, with barbs that pierced the victim from within, and it suppressed him, and he endured it. Not because he was restrained, but because the person he loved asked him to. The spell taken from him carries a judgment that sits oddly against the name on his health bar. The Lord of Frenzied Flame shall take their torment, despair, their affliction, every sin, every curse, all melted away. Yet Midra, like others before him, was too weak to become a lord. He is called the Lord of Frenzied Flame, and the game says in the same breath that he failed to become one. Both are printed. The expansion does not reconcile them. When he finally gives in, halfway through the fight, he pulls his own head off, and a ball of yellow fire takes its place. And when he dies, his last words are not about the flame, or the world, or the people who tortured him. Enough. I have endured more than enough. I ask you forgive me, dearest Nanaya. Who Nanaya was is never said. There is a torch elsewhere in the country, made from a dying flame of frenzy, attached to a small spine, and its description says that all that remains of him is cradled gently by Nanaya. He held out for as long as he could because she asked him to, and the last thing he does is apologize for stopping. Two fights remain, and they are the two halves of everything we have walked through. The first is at the top of a mountain of black rock, up a path that climbs out of a pit, and to reach it, you have to pass a man who has already been destroyed by what is up there. Igon is lying broken at the side of the path when you first find him, and he is not coherent. Please no more, he says. Spare me your cruelty. He is a former scavenger who found honor through the dragon rites, went after the thing at the summit, and was taken apart in body and mind. And then, having been taken apart, he crawled back up the mountain to be there when somebody else tried. What he asks of you is unusual. Take this finger, he says. Summon me. Summon my soul. At the top is Baal, and Baal is missing most of himself. He fights on the exposed bone stumps of severed limbs because his winged arms and his back wings and one of his legs are gone, and he tears the mountain apart anyway with a fused flame lightning that nothing else in this world has. He lost those limbs a very long time ago in a fight with somebody we have already met. Baal betrayed the Dragon Lord. He turned on Placidus Sax, and the two of them very nearly destroyed each other, and Baal fled here to the peak with his body ruined. And here is the detail that closes the circle from that whole outside time. Two of the heads Placidus Sax is missing are on Baal's body, still attached, still biting into him all these ages later, because when the Dragon Lord's heads came off, they did not let go. Every time you fight Baal, you are looking at the remains of the thing we found waiting for a departed god, embedded in the thing that maimed him. And the punishment Placidusax devised is the part that reframes an entire mechanic. Dragon communion, the rite where a hunter eats a dragon's heart at an altar to take its power, the thing you have been doing casually all night at a cathedral in Caelid, was created by Placidusax as revenge. He set it up so that humanity would hunt Baal and Baal's descendants forever. Every drake you have killed and every heart you have swallowed was a move and a grudge between two dragons that predates the Erdtree. There is a dragon woman on that mountain named Florisax who gave up her ancient form and took feeble flesh to help bring Baal down, and she still serves the Lord in the storm. What she says about him is the gentlest sentence in this entire game, and I have been saving it for the end of the night. Tonight, like every night, my solace is yours. May it grant you sleep in your place beyond time. She sends him her rest every night to a Lord who cannot be reached in a moment outside the world, who is waiting for a god that will not come. It does not help. She does it anyway. The last fight is at the top of a tower at the end of the Shadow Country, at a gate a boy has spent this entire expansion walking toward, shedding pieces of himself at every milestone. And what is standing in front of the gate is the general from the Wailing Dunes. Radon is here, whole, restored, enormous, holding the twin blades he carried before the rot, and he is not alone. Riding on his back, arms around his shoulders, is Mikola. Look at that shape for a moment, because you have seen it before tonight. A colossal warrior with a smaller figure mounted on his back, riding into a fight he is fully capable of winning by himself. The last time this game showed you that silhouette, it was a golden lion on the shoulders of the first Elden Lord, and the lion was there to restrain him, and the founder's single moment of freedom in his entire recorded existence was tearing it off and throwing it to the floor. Radon does not get to do that. The vow behind it is shown to you in a flashback, and it is two children talking. Lord Brother, Michaela says, I am going to be a god. If we honor our part of the vow, promise me you will be my consort. I will make the world a gentler place. A gentler place? That is what all of this was for, and I do not think the expansion is being sarcastic about it. The circlet Mikala wears says the same thing without irony. This circle was to be the very foundation upon which Mikala's age of compassion would have been built should it ever come to pass. But the machinery underneath the promise is charm. Mikala's power is that people love him involuntarily, and everyone who follows him into this country is under it. And the reason you can resist is that he abandoned the rune that carried it, and you picked it up off the thing guarding it. The incantation taken from his return states the exception plainly. Mikola sought to accept all that was and would be, but found one that refused to be embraced. You are the one that refused. That is your entire role in his story, and in the middle of it is Radon, who has asked nothing on screen. What he agreed to, and whether he agreed, and whether anything a person promises as a child under the influence of somebody who cannot be refused counts as agreement, the game will not tell you. His side of the vow is never itemized. He does not speak. Mikola speaks for him and calls him consort, and the fight begins. Malenia said it before either of us understood it. Standing over her half-brother in the ruin of Caelid, as the first bloom opened and the rot took his mind, she leaned down and told him, "Mikola awaits thee, O promised consort." That was not a taunt. It was a message being delivered. The battle that destroyed a region and hollowed out the strongest man alive was at least in part an errand. So here is the last image this game gives you. A warrior who learned to bend gravity so he would not have to leave a small horse behind, resurrected in a body that is probably not his own, standing at the door of divinity with a god on his back who loves him in a way that cannot be declined, defending an age of compassion that has not happened and will not now, against the only person in the world capable of refusing it. He is guarding something that is already gone. Yeah, they all were. The knight was on an empty road, carrying a torch made to see assassins who had already come and gone. The stone watchman held a sword with the eye chipped out of it. The commander raised his banner over a poisoned field for an army that had rotted and a lord who had run. The queen sat in a locked library with an egg, making children who do not survive. The avatars came into being after the disaster to protect the saplings of a tree you would burn. The giant tended a fire he was cursed to keep, alone, for a woman who had already destroyed his people. The blade waited at the foot of a rotting sanctuary for a brother who had been stolen out of it. The shadow carried death inside his own body because somebody had already taken it from him once. The mother of every voice this world ever obeyed lay broken at the bottom of a hole, waiting for a message, and the Dragon Lord held his post outside time for a god that fled before the Erdtree existed. The order the world asks you to walk it in was the argument all along. It starts with a thing that was assembled out of other people's limbs, and it ends with a man carrying somebody else's god on his back, and in between, almost everyone you kill is at a post that stopped meaning anything long before you arrived, keeping faith with something that cannot keep faith back. Nobody up there is guarding treasure. They are guarding absence, and they are very good at it, and they will not stop. You have met the thing in the chapel and the knight on the empty road. You have met the man who cut off his own arm, the queen who was never a champion, and the knight who had her sword regilded to say she had changed sides. You have met the general who learned to bend the stars for a scrawny horse, the king who loved a tree that never loved him, and the brother who went down instead of up. You have met the last giant, the blade who never knew defeat, the shadow who was only ever a vessel, and the Lord still waiting in the storm. You have met a saint who took in a dead woman's butterflies, and a man who endured a sword through his body because somebody asked him to. That is a great many names for one night, and there is no need to keep them. Let the room be as dark as it is. Let the weight of the blankets be the only thing you are keeping track of. The gauntlet is finished and every door in it is open now, and nothing is waiting on the other side of any of them. They are all still at their posts. They always will be. That is not sad in the end, or not only sad, it is the last honest thing this world has to offer, that something can be worth doing after the reason for it has gone. Thank you for walking it with me. Sleep well, and if there is nothing left at your post either, may you set it down gently and rest.